know, sometimes, and he alluded to it at the beginning, and it is, it was great. I mean, I'm saying this as a positive thing, but when he kind of laughed and said, well, I've got to speak on the bus ministry, and Brother Eric yesterday told us all how to get out of it, you know. But here's the thing. That's the elephant in the room. It is. Here's why. Jason said, I'd like to talk to you, Brother Eric, about it, you know. Here's the elephant in the room about the bus ministry. See, I still go to the National Bus Conference in Walkerton, North Carolina, every year. Just preached it 2 months ago at Brother Bob's. And I do it every year. I've been going now for about, for a while at DB, after he passed away, and then, after he passed away, or the house passed away, they started inviting me to come, and I've been coming ever since they did in heaven. I went for a while with Bob Gray from Florida, now I go to Gray every year. And what's interesting is, Jason, I watched the crowd there get smaller and smaller every year. And I've been going for about 8 years now, so, started off, pretty decent pastor. I mean, it was a good crowd, And this last year, it's the smallest crowd I've ever seen. These are people coming to get ideas on how to run buses. Here's why. The elephant in the room is the bus ministry doesn't work like it usually. That's the hard thing to say. But somebody's got to say it. I'm now saying it at the National Conference, and they're accepting it. They're like, fine. Somebody gives us a little relief, because for so long, the bus ministry has been a statue, a doctrine, an amazing thing in independent Baptist churches. The truth of the matter is, nobody really runs buses anymore but independent Baptists. A few Assembly of God, very few Southern Baptists, but nobody really does it but us. Why? Well, for a lot of reasons. It's expensive, it costs a lot of money, buses are, but here's the main reason. And Jason, and I'm going to give you some good thoughts. I'm going to read down from all this. And I've shared this with the greatest and the bestest minds in the world of the bus ministry. Because Jason's right, I love it. I meet up with it. I've got 11 bus rides now. I drive a bus service. I don't get home until 2 o'clock. So I'm in this thing like crazy. But here's the big thing, because if you look at what the bus ministry has produced in churches, it's very little results. The results we have are awesome. We've got our stories. I've got my stories. I can tell you about Glenn Gallus, who is a second Prince giver in our church, who is with the bus ministry. We've got our stories. Claudia and Digna, who are now, I reached them in Chicago. Claudia is the Dean of Education at Champion Baptist College, and she was a bus kid in Chicago. I mean, I've got the stories. I could give you at least 10 stories of incredible success in 34 years of running buses. I could give you the stories. But in reality, what we've seen is we've seen the bus ministry produce a lot of quick results. Baptizing children, seeing children get saved, get baptized. Our numbers look good in those categories. But the best categories are obviously families reached, still in church, serving God. And those stories are getting tougher and tougher. And what we're seeing is churches who used to run 50, 60 buses, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 buses now, and you know this because of Norris and all that. Now we see those churches with no buses and dissipated results, and small churches, because the bus ministry doesn't produce results to keep churches going. It just produces quick results. Now here's what I'm saying. I'm saying to get the elephant out of the room and to address the bus ministry. And by the way, what I'm fixing to talk about, which is reaching children, we've got to be honest and say that the most important thing anymore is, Jason, not how many buses we run. It's not, I got to start with a bus route and fill up this one. Because honestly, if you're like Jason P. or Eric Pacey, you can fill 20 buses up. I mean, I know how to do it. I could join this church Sunday. They have 60 kids in church next Sunday. I promise. I'm just good at it. I'm gifted. I mean, this is my gift. I can do a program. I can act like a monkey. I mean, I got it going on. I mean, you want to talk about muscle? I can sing 25 right now without looking at a song. I mean, I got it. I'm just made for the bus station.
Could you come this Sunday?
I can come. But the reality is, bus ministry is not as an effective tool as it was 20 years ago. That's what I believe in dealing with you. So we want to keep bus ministry alive, but I think what we want to address more than anything, and I think even what Jason, if you listen to him closely, what he addressed was, he did say things about the bus ministry, but a lot of what he said would be good if he wasn't talking about the bus ministry. 80% of what he said would be good if you were just talking about reaching children. So that's what I'm going to do, is just again give you some ideas on reaching children. Let me give you this last thought on bus ministry too. And I wrote this down. And it's hard to process all this because it's just reality, because we feel so guilty if we're not doing it. At least I do. And that's kind of what's kept me busting to this point, is guilt. I know I probably need to make some changes. I just feel bad about doing it. But I probably stayed at this level so long, and it has hurt our church. We've lost some families because of behavioral problems. And if I had to go over Jason, I would do it differently. I would start my church, but I would wait a couple of years to run buses until I built up a core of really strong Christians who could handle what I put on them after 3 months. After 3 months, I put my core 70 through 150 bus kids, and it was just chaotic, and I feel like I would have done it differently. And I teach it differently now. But that's what life experience is so great about. You look back and say, hey, don't make the same mistakes I made, So I would encourage you, probably in a great spot right now, to not feel guilty about, do I get another bus, but just to, like you're doing right now, say, hey, we got to make some hard decisions because of our situation, We can't bring teenagers right now. But we will, those types of things, which are already making decisions. The last one I have for you is this, is that it's hard to get people to work with bus ministry. I preached it for the national conferences at Walkertown, North Carolina. I don't know how many are familiar with Bobby Robertson. He's my pastor, and he's one of my heroes. But you know what I saw this year, Pastor, from Bobby's, is all the bus captains are, I'd say 80% of the bus captains are 70 years or older. They're guys that have been bus captains for 30, 40, 50 years. It's hard to get young couples today to give up 4, 5, 6 hours on Saturday. Economy and working extra jobs. The bottom line is, again, the elephant in the room is, if you or I mean, look at this week. We've got, this is great. I'm going to teach it. There was 800 people here. I would teach the same way I'm going to teach. But it doesn't draw. It's hard. I don't think if you had Ray Young, you'd have any more people. It doesn't matter who you have. These subjects are tough subjects to talk about anymore because so few people are doing it. And then there's a lot of other reasons. It's hard to get independent Baptists together about anything. But it's especially hard to get them together about bus ministry because most of them just aren't in it anymore. Most of them are. And here's the thing. They're feeling guilty about it. And so what I'm doing is I'm starting to talk about it more to relieve the pressure, to get people to realize that because I'm still in it, I got a little authority to say it because it's not like I quit it. I've got 11 buses every Sunday. I'm going to spend $1,000 tomorrow to run the buses. I've got a bus driver just called me, and brother, we got ice cream sandwiches tomorrow, this and that. I'm in it. So while I'm in it, and while I've got some authority to say this, I'm just simply saying that the most important thing we can do is not necessarily starting a bus route for 60 people in our church that maybe we can't handle. The most important thing we do is take what we've got and develop it and work it and grow it and disciple it so that we can reach families who have children, so we can strengthen our core and then find creative ways to reach children. Which, by the way, there's a lot of ways to reach children these days in addition to the bus ministry. Okay? And so anyway, that's just some thoughts to kind of, maybe add to what Jason's saying to relieve some of the pressure, because I wonder really how many people in this room really are running the bus right now every Sunday. Probably not many. And so we've got to look at other ways we can do this as well. Let me talk to you about this. So much of what reaching children adds up to is this. It's going beyond the classroom. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Going beyond the classroom. Now, I may get to the classroom a little bit, but here's what happens, is that, in my estimation, another thing the bus ministry has done is it has given us a way to build our Sunday school without having to work very hard to reach families. Think about it. A Sunday school teacher at Gospel Life Baptist Church automatically has 15 kids in the class if they never make the list. You know, we're dropping them. I mean, me and about 30 people are working like crazy to bring, I think, you know, we average probably 300 or 400 people in buses. So we're working like crazy to bring all these kids to church, and these Sunday school teachers have built-in classes. And so what we've done now is by taking the bus ministry out of the driving crowd, now they've got small classes, and now we're putting pressure on our teachers to do what I'm fixing to tell you. That is, hey, get in the homes of these kids, visit, get to know their parents, remember their birthdays. The responsibility is not just Sundays. The responsibility is it's all week long. We've got to find ways, you know, to go beyond the classroom. The Bible says in Jude 22, it's some having compassion making a difference. And that's the key. Compassion to me equals going beyond what's normal. It's stretching yourself. It's finding ways to get involved in somebody's life because you truly care. You really do care. It's not just a numbers game. It's not just a Saturday thing. It's not just a bus thing. It's not a competition thing. It's not a fall or spring program thing. It's not I'm going to win, you know, a trip to the zoo with my bus workers. Or it's honestly, I love these people and I want to reach them. And it becomes a thing that it becomes a burden that comes from God and not a motivation, not just discouraging motivation and prizes. I think it's great. We do it. And we motivate. We have bus meetings still. And we stand and shout and sing. But sometimes I think we've distracted ourselves from where the burden should come from. That is from the Lord. When you go beyond the classroom, it makes you more effective within the classroom. So I think that's a mistake. When you go beyond the classroom, when you get involved in these children's homes and their lives and you get to know them and what they're going through, when you stand up in front of them and look in their faces, and you've been in their home that week, it changes the way you teach. That's the way I pastor. And I'm a very involved pastor. When I stand in the pulpit and look out at my audience, you know, I did with my people. Jesus taught that. He said, hey, get with them. Get in the crowd with them. He was a friend of sinners. I mean, Jesus was accused of doing a lot of things, not because he did those things, because he was seen with people who did those things, because he had a burden for them. So he got down with them, not doing the things they did, but getting to know them in a way that not many Christians are doing because of different reasons. All right, number one, I'm going to talk to you just for a few seconds about records, keeping good records. This is very important. The Bible says, let everything be done decently and in order. 1 Corinthians 14:40. So here's the thing. If you're going to reach children and really reach them for the long haul, then I think good record keeping is vital. Okay? We got to have records. Just like the bus ministry. You know, I had we're having a kids crusade in 2 weeks, and last night, on the way to IHOP, you know, 10:30 at night, whatever it was, nothing. I got a phone call from one of our ladies, preacher, who knew the address of every bus kid who regularly comes to church. We want their address, their name, so that when they come to Kids Crusade, we can follow up and make a visit. So she wants records. What that lady's telling me is this. We don't want these kids just to be herded through on Kids Crusade. We want these kids to have names and addresses. So if they do make a decision, the next week, preacher, I can have our people to go visit them in their homes and explain to their parents what. See, that takes records. You can't just read things like that. That phone call last night meant a lot to me because it showed me that our people are getting it. We've got to have records of everything we're doing and accomplishing. So, things like getting the name of every child that comes to your class, getting the address of every child that comes to your class. What about this? Knowing the birthday of every child in your class. Knowing their parents' names. How good would that be? You knew that, you know, John and Susie Roberts, you know, that's the parents' names. That's who brought this kid into the world, you know, that's coming to my class every week. I know their parents' names. I have that written down. Keep track of all the phone numbers. You know, that's important. Living arrangements. Do you know the living arrangements of that child? That's a good thing to know. Do you know that child lives with his mom only, his dad only, or with his mom who's living with her boyfriend or vice versa, or lives with his grandparents because his mother's in jail. I've got all those scenarios, okay? I just gave you a few of the scenarios on my bus route. But also, it's not much different than the church. I mean, our church folks these days, some are just as dysfunctional as those that ride the buses. We've got some pretty rough cases. We're in the hood. We're in the center of the city. We see it all, I mean, I still get, somebody visits our church, and the next week I get a note. I've got this probably happened 10 times. We get to our location. We're in a pretty tough area. I get a note, this guy was did you preach it? Did you know this guy's on the job on station registry? I mean, there's some scary things out there. And so we've got to be aware of that. We've got to have good records so that we have more than just, a face. We have a face with a lot of information. Okay? So, again, my personal opinion, good record keeping is going beyond the classroom. And honestly, I believe the large majority of our bus ministry churches are just, again, we get wrapped up. And here's the thing, we just got to be honest. The bus ministry does pad our numbers. It's what makes us bigger if we have bus ministries. It does. Our church attendance, it makes us bigger. So if we're going to do that, let's treat those kids just as special, just as important as if they were, vital members of our church. Because they're people who hopefully one day will become vital members of our church. And the only way to accomplish that, I think, is to go beyond the Sunday morning experience in Sunday school and church, right? Number 2, so keep good records. Number 2, let's talk about having personal contact with these kids and going beyond just the bus visit, all right? Good bus workers make for lazy Sunday school teachers, okay? That's kind of a little cliche that I have. Good bus workers make for lazy Sunday school teachers. Because if a Sunday school teacher has a bus worker visiting every week, then why does she need to go visit? So what we teach our Sunday school teachers, heavy duty, hardcore, is that you have just as much responsibility as a Sunday school teacher to visit in the homes of these kids as the bus captain is. We really stress that, and we work hard at it. Again, going beyond the classroom. So let's talk about the visit. How can we contact that child? What ways, what creative ways can you and I come up with to make an effort to have some sort of a touch with that child every week? All right, you can send postcards. You can send letters. So that's one way you can do it through the mail. You can go to their homes and make a visit. Obviously, I won't say much about that. It's simple. I will say this, that it's really encouraging when the pastor's son gets a visit from the Sunday school teacher, and that happens often. My son's Sunday school teacher, he's a pastor's son. Knocks on the door of the pastor's house and says, "Is Ezekiel home?" And yes, he is. Or could I talk to him? Sure. Ezekiel, someone's here to see you. And here comes my 12-year-old boy to the door. It's a Sunday school teacher making a visit to the pastor's house. But doesn't my kid deserve a visit? Yeah. I mean, he's a kid. I know he's the pastor's kid, but why should he be treated any differently? And so sometimes I think that we have to be careful. We're not, and I'll say more about this actually when I get to the team, but we can't put more emphasis on the bus kids than we do our own kids and the drive-in kids. I mean, to me, I'd rather shut the bus ministry down tomorrow and reach the kids that are already coming than I would keep reaching bus kids at the expense of, it's interesting, but one of the things that, this is convicting, but it's the elephant in the room that we never talk about. But I've had parents come to me now for years and say, "Preacher, our kids going to Sunday school and hearing the F word and hearing, seeing things that honestly, we don't feel like our kids getting an experience at Sunday school, getting taught something that is really helpful because the teachers having to spend so much time. We've got 15 bus kids and 3 drop-in kids in the class. And so I don't blame the teachers. The teachers having to focus on the 15 kids who came without their parents. And you've got 3 kids here whose parents taught to come to church. That's hard to talk about. It's just easier just to say, "Reach kids, go visit." But when the facts are that, and if we don't address the facts as pastors, we're going to just recycle this problem. So that's why I think these things are good to talk about and address and try to solve, And so we've got to visit our kids. Get to know their parents and get to know their siblings. Every child has parents, and usually every kid has more siblings that live in that house that maybe could be reached like he or she is. This is an interesting study, but what we did was one time, and I've done this more than once, but it's fun to do because it kind of gives you an idea of what your potential is. Okay? I'll talk about the bus ministry here for a second, but you could do this. You could honestly do this in your whole church. It would really be a cool study. Have your bus captains turn in on a particular Saturday or Sunday how many people live in the houses that they visit every Saturday. Now let me give you this illustration first. There was a time when I think our buses averaged about 60, okay, every Sunday. Well, I mean, we've averaged more than that at times, but I'm just giving you this illustration. So that Saturday, I went ahead and did every house I visited, I asked, let's say I knocked on the door to Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, and they had 2 kids come, and I said, hey, let's find out, how many kids actually live in here? How many people live in this house? Oh, it's me and my husband, and of course his mother. She's been with us for a couple of years. And then we have 2 more children, and 8 people. So I'm picking up 2, there's 8 in there. Well, I did this to a whole bunch of 180 people were in the houses I visited, and I was only getting 60 to 180. Which means I am knocking on the door of 120 people that aren't coming to church. Does that make sense? See, it's a neat thing to do, because here's the deal. What I may need to do is make a greater effort at concentrating on 120 people. I'm already going by their house. I'm already driving to their house, paying for the gas, walking to the door, knocking on the door. Why not attempt to get some of those 120 illustrated? And they say, okay, what about your church? Same thing in your church. You've got a lot of people coming into your church that know a lot of people. And sometimes it's best to reach those, and I'll talk about this again in the team, with some thoughts on reaching teenagers, but sometimes we end up not reaching those closest to us. And we make it hard on us. So I got to find people. I don't know where they Well, they might be right beside your congregation. They might be on your bus route. They might be right there in front of you. You're not capitalizing on really the best prospects. So get in their homes, find out who lives there, and add that to your record keeping so you know where you stand. Okay? Here's another way to contact people. Visit the neighbors of the kids that are already coming. Sometimes our bus routes get really spread out in reaching children, and like I'll have a captain say, "Man, look there, I'm going to pick up the kid, I'm going all the way over here," and I'm thinking, okay, wait. Is there any kids that live in between this house and 3 miles down the road where you're going? Oh yeah, there's houses. Well, why don't we visit within a mile radius or even 6 blocks of that house? Let's keep things tight and be good stewards. Yeah, but preacher, I've got somebody 3 miles out there. Now I'm going to scare you. You ready for this? You're not ready for this. I'm going to say it. Small group. How many people can get that? Give that kid to another church. Well, there's nobody big Baptist churches out there. Find a good Baptist church that preaches the gospel and give it to them. Because if you're driving 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 miles, when you could be visiting close to your church and close to the area where the majority of your kids are coming. You say, well, yeah, they believe, this, whatever that is. I don't even know what it is. It's a gospel preaching church. I really don't care what else they believe. As long as they So that verse is saying that it's the truth. We've had to do that. I've had to say, look, I'm battling right now with an idea. We go to the projects, Pastor, and we pick up a lot of black kids, tons, and we bring them to church. They're great. I love them. But I start to feel guilty because there's a couple of black pastors that I know have great churches, preach the gospel, and I'm driving by their church, picking up all these kids, and I know we can blame them and say, well, they're not. But I'm wondering, what if my workers, what if I went and visited, I haven't done this yet, but I'm thinking about it. Go visit that black pastor, sit there and take him to lunch and say, look, Let's talk. How can we partner together to reach people across the street from your church? You know, just let me know, what can I do to help you to reach these people? We're bringing to our church right now. We're not reaching the mom and dad. They're coming. But I just feel like maybe if I talk to you, brother, you know, who knows? Maybe that would be a way that we could, you said, yeah, but we lose 15, 20 kids on our count. That's the problem, is we're too concerned about how many we bring versus what's best for that kid.
That's good.
That's hard for me to say, but after 20 years in the ministry, I'm learning this stuff, and I'm willing to say it and get it out and talk about it. I think Jack Scott actually is doing some of that in Chicago. But instead of bringing kids all the way from an hour and a half, he's now partnering with some churches, and I'm sure they're not all independent fundamental Baptist churches. Some of them are probably just black churches, and I'm guessing I haven't talked with them. Anyway, those are just crazy thoughts to maybe get us to think out of the box. Meet friends and neighbors. Pick up closest to your bus route. Personal contact. Now, here's the thing. Take a treat with you when you make these visits. I think it's good to take something with you. Now, it doesn't have to be, you know, big. It doesn't even have to be candy, but I like taking lollipops. I think it's a neat thing. You know, when the lollipop man comes. In fact, I think in Bruce Fry's song, it talks about, I don't know, can you think of, didn't he talk about like bring a piece of candy or something? I think, by the way, it's a new bus song now. Yeah, it's on his next CD. It's going to be awesome. I just with Bruce last week, and he said, man, you know, I got a new bus song. And I'm like, dude, don't do this to me, you know. Brand new, it's going to be good. It's about, you know, somebody they make this from the bus. So those songs keep going too. But anyway, bring a little treat. I don't know. It's just fun. When you know what? If you're not for sugar and candy, go to the health food store and pick up something. You know, but bring about something. And I think it's special when you knock on that door, you make that contact with that child, and you pull out that lollipop or that little piece of candy. I think it's just a great way. And sometimes we miss that. All right, let me see here. I already mentioned this, but I wanted to say this anyway. Again, visit. Don't just visit. Again, I'm not just talking about bus workers now. I'm talking about social teachers. Don't just visit the bus kids, but visit the church kids too. I wanted to say that a little bit more specifically. Visit church kids too. Make sure if you're not on a bus route and you're just a church member that loves kids, then help visit kids that aren't being visited every Saturday. Visit those kids. Like I gave you the illustration about my son. Those kids need visits too. All right. Here's another way to touch kids' lives outside the classroom. Remember, that's kind of the basis of what I'm teaching all of this on. Going beyond the classroom. What about this? What about having parties and get-togethers with your kids? Okay? I'm not talking about just picking them up on the bus, or I'm not talking about just having Sunday school on Sundays, but having a get-together, having a summer party, obviously with older kids. We have Brother Bucky Robinson, and I don't know, maybe Jason. You remember Brother Jason? On his house. He has a pool. He has, twice a year, has pool parties at his house. He has to get a sign thing and all of that. But I mean, it's incredible what he does. I mean, it blows me away, all these activities that he does with these kids, but it creates, they love it. No wonder he's a kid magnet, because the kids know he goes beyond the classroom. He goes beyond the bus route, and he does a lot of extra things with it. For instance, a kid has a birthday on your bus or in your class, birthday party. And don't do it on Sundays. Do it during the week, you know. And again, I know, I'm not talking about you, I'm not saying you do this every single week, but I mean once a month. I mean, wouldn't it be good once a month to have a children's activity that you sponsor because you're trying to reach these kids, you know? Take them out for Saturday breakfast. That's a fun thing to do. Pick up your kids and bring them to Waffle House. Take them over to your house. Have activities in your own house. The park's a great place to meet. Again, go beyond the classroom. Here's a great, go to their school and eat lunch with them. That's fantastic. That's easy. I mean, you take a lunch break anyway, so you can go to your public school and get approved. They're going to make sure you're okay, you know. Let me tell you something I did. This is awesome. I'm a member of the Rotary Club, a Hot Springs Rotary Club. I joined about 6 months ago. It's really been a really great group for me. I encourage the pastors to find a local Rotary to join. It costs a little bit. You know, the church put in its budget to pay my dues. But it's a great thing. Jason, this is a great thing for a young pastor too. It probably wouldn't be, you know, maybe cost you $50 a month, maybe less. Depends on what they charge you for lunch and a little dude. But you get to meet so many people. Because normally, and most guys have more than one Rotary Club, but the one that I joined is the one that has the most businessmen. It's the oldest one. It's about 150 men. Well, they have something called Rotary Reader. And what it is it's a program that Rotary members can sign up for, and you go into public school and you read weekly a children's book to a child in your local public school. So, what I do is weekly, on Fridays at 2 o'clock, I have this classroom. I walk on campus, I go, do the fingerprint thing, you know, okay, approved, and then it spits out my name on my shirt, and then I walk down the classroom, you know, public school, hey. Then I walk in the door, I knock on the door, hey, so I'm here, oh, yeah, it's you for you. She gets the boy, he walks out the hallway, we sit at this table, and I read a book to him every week. It's great. It's outside the classroom, this kid loves it. I mean, he thinks I'm the bomb.com. I mean, he thinks I'm the coolest dude on planet Earth because I come and read a book to him. And sometimes he chooses the book, sometimes I read a book from the house. And, you know, the children's books are usually pretty short. You got to be careful not to, you know, you don't want to read one that's going to take you an hour. Because you got about 20 to 30 minutes if you want to take that long. And what I usually do is I'll read one page, let him read one page, we'll go back and forth, you know. And it's really fun. It's called Rotary Reader. But it's an idea that's out of the box, it's unusual, it's outside the classroom, and it's another way to touch these kids' lives, all right? So that's a great one. I love that one. Go to their school and eat lunch with them or become a Rotary Reader. Let's see here. Here's another great one. I like this one. I've done this often, and that is take a child that is in your class. And again, I'm saying all this stuff knowing that you have you can't just pick up a child by yourself. I know you got to have either somebody with you or two. I know that. So you just keep all that in mind. I'm not teaching the CLA part of it, but here's a great thing: to take a child and visit his friends, because he knows kids that you don't know, and he can take you places to visit families and kids. He can get you in. I've had some kids get me in places and in homes and in situations that I would have never been able to get in. But hey, this kid, because he knew so-and-so and somebody else and this, that, and the other. Okay. So that's another way to reach children and visit children take kids within your class or all your class and visit others. All right. Now let's talk about preparing to teach your Sunday school lesson for just a second. Because again, this is outside the classroom. Think about it. The time that you take every week to study your lesson is outside the classroom. So, let's talk about that for just a minute. How much time should I take to prepare? Well, let me give you, I've got some notes here to jot down. Number one, it's pretty cool, all right? I got 8 things here. I'll read it to you. Start preparing a week early for your next week's class by doing this. One, take your class. Read it Sunday. This is Sunday afternoon or Sunday night. Read your lesson Sunday for content. So I'll teach you out of John chapter number, 3. I'm going to read John 3 or 4 times for content. I'm looking for stuff. I'm looking for ideas. I'm circling words. I'm getting. All right. Number 2, read it Monday for thoughts. So read it Sunday for content. Monday, read it again. And this time, I'm asking God to give me thoughts. I'm writing down the thoughts that come to mind. I'm saying, man, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can take this thought and, if I'm teaching on Jesus, the bread of life. Monday's my day to think about, okay, maybe I can have my wife bake a fresh, loaf of bread. I mean, coming up with an idea. You see? You know what preachers call? You know what all preachers do? It's called Saturday night special. It's only I got to stand before 200 people tomorrow, preach God's holy word. I better get something, So, to me, why is it any less important for a teacher? At least that's my thing. So Monday for thought. Tuesday, look for Jesus. Read it and look for Jesus. Because you know what? If you can't find Jesus in what you're teaching, you don't need to teach it. You need to find Jesus in it. So find how can this lesson point the kids to Jesus Christ. All right? Jason knows what I'm talking about. Pastor, you know, we define something and you get excited about it, you can't wait to, you know, when that happens, you get pumped. You're like, oh, man. And you get to that point in something, you're like, are you ready for this? Because you feel like you're about to tell something they've never heard before, you know. And I do that sometimes, you know. Not everything, because I don't know what I say, I know, you know, it's repetitive, but sometimes I'm like, and then every now and then somebody across my phone, yeah, I saw that, you know, 7 years ago, you know, child, you know. I thought God showed me that. Anyway, look for nuggets. Read Thursday with, I'm going to call it, with helps. H-E-L-P-S, like commentaries, or maybe other books, or a dictionary, or maybe, you know, another sermon outline from another preacher, or whatever. You know, look, or a lesson outline. Read Thursday with helps. Read it Friday, and I like this one. Read it Friday with your class roll book. So here I am studying now, looking at the names of the kids that I'm going to teach you. I'm teaching on something, and I look here and I think, boy, this is going to help them. And I begin to really, my heart begins to knit the lesson and the kids, the lesson and the children begin to come together, and I realize, man, this is going to be awesome. I cannot wait to stand in front of this kid. Then we use Saturday to outline. Make sure all your illustrations are there. Make sure your main points are there. Make sure you are ready. This is what I do even in sermon preparation. Like tonight, before I go to bed, I already know what I'm preaching. I'm preaching a series of messages on God keeps His promises. Tomorrow is I will never fail. I will not fail because God is always victorious. That's my message tomorrow. I will not fail. God is always victorious. And of course, I've given you a lot of references out of Revelation. You know, and I'm excited about this one thought I have about bruising the head of Satan. And I've got some good illustrations about that. God is always victorious. So tonight, I'm gonna finish my thinking, make sure all my illustrations are there, make sure my points are right. Tomorrow, and then read Sunday, I've got to get to brush over. So make sure Sunday morning you wake up early enough to go over the scriptures again, just before you teach or preach. And make sure you're ready. So preparing is very, very important, all right? Then, finally, let's talk about actually teaching the lesson. Teaching now we're at Sunday. Look at all that I've done. I've made visits. I had an activity. I studied my lesson. I mean, I put a lot into this. Now I step before my class on Sunday with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours. Exactly, maybe for some I'm not. I put 2 to 10 hours into this class. I mean, I'm ready. I'm excited. But what if I get there late? What if that morning I'm running late? I've only got an hour. Yeah. So on Sunday morning, I want to say this under the thought of teaching class: be on time. Be on time. Okay. Then use your class time strategically. Okay. Have a plan. Like Jason was talking about the bus program. I've always thought that was so strange. Why would bus captains not have a bus program? You got these kids on the bus. You got this time with them, and you're letting them jack around and do whatever they want. Man, what an opportunity. Every year bus captains, when do you start the program? When the first kid gets on the bus. You just start it. You sit next to that kid. That's a program. You talk to them. How was school? How's your family? What's going on? Glad you came. You know? And I always get enlightened on the first week of Bible college when the freshmen come. We're having a good year. She's got 70, 80 freshmen coming this year. And but I'm always enlightened by these freshmen because they come and they write on their ministry sheet that they've been in the bus ministry. And then they get on the bus and they just sit there. And I'll say, hey guys, this picture of Bible college doesn't mean you can just sit there next to your friend. Get involved. I mean, if you've been doing this, prove it, show me. What have you learned, you know? I will say this about Jason. You can tell he was already in the bus ministry long before he ever became this champion. I like that, and I was too. You don't have to go to Bible college and get spiritual. In fact, it's pretty good to be spiritual before we get there, you know, usually. It's good. So, get there early, then use your class time properly. you don't want to lose any classroom time because of one or two misbehaving kids. I wrote down these topics. One, isolation. Sometimes it's good to isolate a problem and maybe have a kid, separate from the crowd, sit in the corner, or sit in the seat separate. You want to be careful what you call that. I don't know if I would call it, the bad seat or the evil seat or the evil corner. Be careful how you word it, but just make sure there's some kind of isolation. One famous, these are all simple, but maybe they lose their treat. They don't get the ice cream sandwich. And they don't say like, "You're not getting your treat." They just say, "Look, Junior, if you talk one more time, misbehave, you're not going to be able to get the promotions there. You're not going to get it." And just be kind about it, and then stick to it. And I can assure you, normally, even though they'll be ticked and you might even hear an expletive or two, I guarantee you, if you stick with it and do the right thing, they'll come around and the next week they'll understand. Worst case scenario, you got a kid that's just misbehaving in your class. Maybe he rides the bus, maybe he doesn't. And it's just week after week after week. I think it is appropriate and it's okay that you have to go to that captain, that parent, and say, "Look, I need you to help. I want to be very careful how this comes across. Please don't take this wrong. There's absolutely no rejection in this at all. I don't want to lose your child, but I feel like you need to be responsible for your child the next 2 weeks because of what's happening in the classroom. And if you and I can partner together on this," if I'm talking to a bus parent, I'm saying, maybe you could come to church and sit with your child, or maybe I could just not pick up your child for 2 weeks so that they get the idea that they have to behave to come to church. If I'm talking to a parent in church, I'll say, "Look, I know this is going to be tough, but if you could take your kid to your Sunday school class for a couple of weeks, and we can work together and let them know they just can't behave like they're behaving," and work with them, again, partnering with parents, making those hard decisions. Where you're going to have problems, this is where we've had problems for years, we had bus ministry problems, is a bus captain doesn't know how bad it is in Sunday school, so he just keeps bringing the kid, and you better be strangling that guy. At least this is the way it's been for us. You're ready to kill him because he's bringing Junior. He loves Junior because he's on the bus eating candy and screaming and yelling, standing on the seats and having a time, And then in the Sunday school class, the kids, which that's not in bus environment. A class is sit up straight like a soldier, sit up like a princess, be quiet, teach the lesson. And so the bus captain just keeps bringing the kid until finally the bus captain and the Sunday school teacher actually hate each other. That's a good working environment. So you say, how many times have you faced this? I think last week was the 780th time I faced it. You face it all the time. Again, you've got to teach and you've got to translate and somehow get people to buy into it. That if you have a bus ministry, it's got to work alongside the Sunday school, and the Sunday school got to work alongside the bus ministry. There's got to be communication, there's got to be teamwork, but it's not going to be. So, especially if your bus ministry kids are more than your driving kids, which pretty much is true about every church. I bet it's even true about yours. It is about mine. If you run buses, it's just so much easier to get your percentages a little bit out of whack. It just is. Now, people-wise, we have a whole lot more people drive in than the bus kids. We had, summertime we were low. We probably had 250 last summer in the buses, and we probably had 1,000 in church. So we had 750 drive in, but here's the problem. We didn't have 250 kids. We probably had 150 kids drive in and 250 drive the bus. So it's you really got to work hard at communicating to the captains and the teachers. You guys have to work together. And so anyway, that's a challenge. But, all right, that's just some things I hope again, I know I'm not preaching, and Jason's not preaching, we're just giving ideas, and we got to preach. But by the same token, I hope these things will help you. And you know what? Can I give you some advice before we break again? I always do this when I sit in a lesson like this. And I did it with Jason. If I can take one thing away, just one. I'm going to write down 50, but if I take one thing away, it's success. And I did. I took one thing away from Jason. So I wrote it down and said, you know what, I'm going to go back. He reminded me of something we need to do better at. And so maybe one of these things will change the way that you're teaching and reaching children outside of the classroom on Sundays. All right?